as a country, we are not doing well.
Today on Your World.
Ukipeleka bibi hospitali, kuna expectation, hata expectation unataka ukitoka unatoka na familia yako ukikuja nao. But the saddest part ni unacha bibi wa moga atoka na watoto.
Big babies, multiple babies, twins, triplets, sometimes even 4 babies, quadruplets. That is a huge risk factor.
Well, hello there. It's good to see you right here on Your World. My name is Winnie Lubembe, hoping that you are having a better start to the day. And while we're hoping that you're having a better start to the day, today's conversation is pretty heavy, and we'll be focusing on postpartum haemorrhage. And this is actually a leading cause of maternal mortality worldwide. And the biggest question is, why are we still losing women in 2024 to postpartum hemorrhage? What is it that we can do to prevent that? And this is across all levels, from communities to maybe professionals, as well as county and national governments. There's so much that we need to cover on postpartum hemorrhage, but first we'll speak to Mr. Ronald, who unfortunately lost his wife after delivering twins to postpartum hemorrhage. That conversation is coming up right after this.
Postpartum hemorrhage, also known as PPH, is defined as severe bleeding after childbirth, is the leading cause of maternal mortality worldwide. Each year, about 14 million women experience PPH, resulting in about 70,000 maternal deaths globally. Death from PPH is largely preventable and has been nearly eliminated in high-income countries, yet women in low- and middle-income countries continue to be extremely affected.
Now, one of the most exciting parts about pregnancy is looking forward to not only seeing the baby or touching the baby or carrying the baby for the first time, but having the mother and the baby back at home safe and sound. But unfortunately, sometimes this doesn't happen all the time. And this is one of the topics that we are tackling, and that is postpartum hemorrhage. And we have Mr. Ronald Otieno, who unfortunately lost his wife to postpartum hemorrhage. And he's here today to share his journey and his story and how he's doing right now. And Ronald, we say thank you.
Yes.
First of all, for agreeing to speak with us. I know it's still a heavy topic for you, right? But here you are today. So asante
Most
sana.
welcome.
Can we go back to 2020? Let's talk about, first of all, you and your late wife. How was it? And let's talk about the pregnancy journey before the birth of your twins.
Wengine Kiswahili.
Yes.
Okay, ilikuwa 2020, nilikuwa tumeanza kuishi. Yeah. Then corona came, pregnancy came. Kenda kufanya ultrasound at first. Before tufanya ultrasound, unajua ni mtoto ni mmoja. Tukabai vitu za mtoto mmoja, tukajua mtoto ni mmoja. Then after 6 months, akaambiwa daktari aende afanye ultrasound, akienda clinic. So after kufanya ultrasound tukapata ni twins. We had to go back to factory setting.
Yes.
Kununua vitu za watoto wawili. Ilikuwa mimi ndo najua, mimi na yeye, and we are very happy.
Yeah.
And expecting kwa wazazi when kama si October. Ilikuwa ni October sasa.
Yeah.
But unfortunately haikuwa happen. Juu ilikuwa jani ngumu sana. Yeah.
Okay.
Mpaka tusaidia tukaenda hospitali. Akajifungua twins.
Alifungua through CS?
Through CS.
CS, okay.
Yeah. But pia alipoteza damu mingi sana. Na damu alikuwa na damu kidogo. So we had to bring some people to donate some. Yeah. But unfortunately, after kuza, alikaa 2 weeks usina akapass. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I'm really sorry about that.
Akaniacha na watoto wawili. Twins, 2 weeks old.
Yeah. And this was, I don't know, like your first pregnancy, watoto wa kwanza.
Watoto wa kwanza.
Yeah.
Na ilikuwa kazi ngumu, ndio kwa kienda hospitali, ukipeleka bibi hospitali. Kuna expectation, hata expectation unataka ukitoka unatoka na familia yako ukikuja nao. But the saddest part ni unacha bibi wa moga atoka na watoto. Kitu chungu sana. It was very trying time hiyo nyakati. Asiwezi tamani mtu apite kitu kama hiyo. Yeah. Juu ni uchungu. Dream, juu sasa unaona amekufa kwa mochari, mtoto wako nasari. Unajaga nisi vitu zote. Corona ndio hiyo pia hapo. Huwezi ingia kwa ward kuona mtu. Yeah. Na ukienda pia hospitali unaenda na gate pass.
So watoto unawaacha nyumbani because
Hapana, walikuwa nasari.
walibaki na
Kwenye mama
sana.
walijifungua, watoto walikuwa na shida. Mama ndiye alikuwa na shida. Watoto wakabaki nasari, mama akiwa anaangaliwa na daktari.
Okay. All right. So and during like birth process, right? So labor, of course alipata labor, mkaenda hospitali, right? Akapelekwa CS.
Yes.
Yeah. So during that process, watoto wakizaliwa is when she was bleeding sana, right?
Yeah.
Was that contained at that time? Like, would you know? Because this is like 2 weeks later is when unfortunately she died. Yeah.
Hiyo process ya labor ilikuwa sidasema ikuwa ngumu. Alienda akajifungua, daktari alikuwa na contain lakini alikuwa na bleeding. Sababu hiyo nyakati daktari alikuwa very busy Kenyatta. Juu mambo na corona na huko. So daktari alikuwa anamwona usiku saa 9 I guess. Ndio alikuwa anamwona daktari anamwona usiku, si mchana. So hapo mchana anabaki na nurse tu.
Okay. So how was she? Hiyo time alikuwa anaangaliwa na nurse.
For the first week she was very strong. Jovial alikuwa anatembea. But the second week alikuja akakuwa weak. Sasa atembei. Ananiambia damu amelose damu na yuko sawa. Hapo ndo nikaita ndugu yangu na rafiki zangu wakuja wakatoa damu.
So wamedonate damu akaekewa but still
hata alikufa akiwa kwa Yesu alikufa alikuwa amekewa damu akakufa. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry. So yeah, I mean, let's just first of all stick with this period, right? So your new dad, watoto ndo hawa twins, bado wakapelekwa nursery, right? And then you also have to deal with this fact that, you know, your wife was okay, and then hayuko sawa. You know, can we just talk about how this was for you, like mentally,
nilikuwa nataka kuja
physically? Yeah.
Akiwa ward, nilikuwa nataka kuuliza daktari nini namfanya, mbona unaona? Na pia wife alikuwa anauliza mbona hawezi kwa discharge. Mbona daktari amesema huwezi toka mpaka siku yenye ataamua kunidischarge. Alikuwa na monitor. So after kudonate damu, hiyo siku itusona Sunday, 8 November 2020. Nilikuwa nakuwa daktari sana but sikumuona. So after kudonate damu, tukakaa naye penye tumekaa hapo mimi na yeye tunapiga story. Ananiambia baba yao, enda home, wende unyoshe nguo zingine ulete kesho ukienda job, ukuje uone watoto.
Okay.
Simi nikatoka. Ilikuwa kitu saa 9. Anti akakuja, akakana anti yake hapo. Akasema uko na anti yako, acha mimi niende. Utabaki na anti yako mkipiga story. Kumbe ndio nisal kwa anakufa na mimi sikuwa juu. Kama kwa nataka niende, ndio akufa. So mimi nimetoka, nimeenda, nimepanda gari, niko all sops. Na fiogo inapigwa na sikuwa nasikia. So mtu amekakanoa akaniambia, kijana simu yako inapigwa. Kupata simu napata niko na miss call 2 na simu ilikuwa inalia. Sasa kushika kwamba Ronald kandi unaweza rudi Kenyatta. Mimi ndio daktari nilikuwa nataka kuongea naye. Ngoja nikwambie nini mbaya.
Okay.
Si nikashuka gari tena nikarudi. Mimi najua finally najua nenda kwamba nini mbaya. Kufika Kenyatta napata amekiwa pamba kwa mdomo. Ambiwa pole, amekufa. Sasa nilikuwa napata amekiwa pamba kwa mdomo. Ilikuwa ngumu sana.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Nilipata hata ametolewa kwa ward, amekuwa kwa sasa kwa room peke yake.
Separate.
Yeah, ndio ashakufa sana ikiwa pamba kwa mdomo. Kaambia tu pole, tulijaribu kumsaidia wewe tunaweza bara tunge saidia hapo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's gone.
She's gone.
Do you try to like find answers because umekuwa tu na yeye a few minutes ago?
30 minutes.
How was she, like, what was the last thing you remember before umwache? Like, yeah, in terms of the state that she was in.
Alikuwa tu weak, hakuwa strong sana, alikuwa weak. Juu pia alikuwa muongezewa damu na drip ya maji. Sasa alikuwa weak kiasi.
Yeah.
Yeah, lakini hakuwa mtu anaweza kufa hiyo masaa. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So did you try to find answers like within the 30 minutes? Now unapigiwa simu and the state that you find her is she's normal.
I tried, but tena aliniambia hata ukijaribu kuulizia utapata. Nurse mwenye alikuwa hapo akaniambia hata ukijaribu kuulizia hautapata answers. Mambo ya Mungu imefanyika. Nikubali tu sasa. Asipo ikubali. Juade kusing kwangu hiyo masaa. Nikapigia watu, kakuja kazini yangu, kakuja kapikia anti yangu mmoja alikuwa Nairobi, juu sina baba Nairobi, baba Kushago. Kuja kaongea nao, wakaona body. Mimi bado hata ija sink kwangu. Najua amekufa but hapana. Mpaka nikarudi kwa nyumba. Haikuwa imesink. Mpaka nikakuja kwa nyumba nikaenda nikakaa na marafiki zangu. Sijawaambia hata nini imefanyika. Juu nashangaa ndaanza kuambiaje. Tumedonate damu nini tena. So kitu nilifanya ndio kwa zangu wajue. Kinaenda pale kwa social media yangu nikaandika rest in peace love. Hivyo watu walikuja wakajua. Mimi singeweza ambia watu. Yeah.
And at this time, so you have to first of all deal with the fact that your wife Amanda may pass, and then you have twins. At what point then, like, did you think that she's no more, Amanda?
The next day.
And you have to, okay.
The next day, because niliambiwa, yes, amekufa. Kuja kesho kwenye clearance ya ward, wakina mochari sasa. Nikaenda, nikapatiwa vitu zake, simu, vitabu, nguo. Nikaambiwa sasa, you have to clear hii hapa, ubaki na watoto kwa nursery na mwili kwa morgue. So pia nikaenda kwa morgue tena kumuona. Sasa ikanihit sasa ukweli. She's no more. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Like, this is just,
ilikuwa ngumu, but nilikuwa peke yangu. I expecting watu watanisaidia kwa hiyo jani, but pia nimekwambia watu wako busy na watu wana shida zao. So nitatembea na wewe hakuna. So nilikuwa nakuja mochari.
Nienda yako.
For 2 weeks.
Watoto walikaa nursery for how long?
Walikaa 1 month. 1 month walikuwa set, walikuwa na shida. Malipo kuwapeleka nikitafuta malipo ndo wapeleka. So ndo maana walikaa huko. Pia niliambiwa niende nishughulikie mama yao nimzike kwanza. Ngoja nichukue watoto.
So how were you? Like, and I think that's the biggest question because you have to deal with like all those things and then uko peke yako,
it was emotionally draining. Kabisa. Hata usingizi, appetite ilikuwa imeisha. Imagine mimi kwa sababu na maji na chai. Sikuwa natembea kwenda kwa watu, juu nilikuwa nalala, asubuhi naenda nashinda Kenyatta. For almost 1 month. So ilikuwa kazi ngumu sana. Ukienda Kenyatta, pia kwa nursery, huwezi ingia tu juu uingia. Utaka ingia, si kwamba nitemea corona. Ya watoto ni delicate sana. So for the first days nilikuwa naleta watoto kwa mlango naona kwa mlango.
Hakuna hata like physical contact in any way. Through glasses.
Mpaka nikapimwa corona. Hapo ndo nikaambiwa kubali kuingia kwa watoto. So ukiingia hii ni bed yao, wamekaa hapa. Nasoma kando kiasi. Sisi wakaribu sama nini? Na waona. So after 3 weeks, sasa nikaanza kubond nao, nakuja, nafungua. Nakaa na wiki for like 2 hours. Bonding. Watamani ulie, watamani ucheke.
So no.
Ananiambia nisikuwe na emotion, nikuwe strong. The emotion pia watu ni kama tuko attach nao sasa.
They feel.
Why wako strong.
But why you really like
it was a routine, daily routine. Wale majamii nimekaa na watoto, mimi ni mbaba, wako ni mama wote. So unaona it's a very awkward situation and weird kwangu.
But at that point, like ile unaambiwa you have to be strong and we hear this a lot of the times and especially for men. Ile unaambiwa, but you have to be strong you have to be strong, or even instances where maybe a family has lost a child either through miscarriage and whatnot, is the husband really anaambiwa just be strong for your wife, be strong for your wife. But now, so here you are alone with the children, your wife has passed on and you're told you have to show no emotions and all things because your children need you. So how were you able to do that?
Kama mwanaume tu una accept ndipo unajua unaumia but unaeka ile strong also facially too strong but deep down una bleed, machozi narudi ndani ukilia utaki kuonesha. It was very emotional, siwezi kudanganya kabisa. Yaani siwezi taka mtu apitie. Au pia kuongea ni shida. Explain, nobody atakuelewa na explain nini juu watu wengi hawajapitia situation kama hiyo.
So watoto wakakaa kwa, I mean eventually preparations
watoto zinaendelea, preparation ya matanga pia inaendelea. So after burial tulizika 28 November. Eka nyumbani 2 days nikakuja Nairobi.
Sasa bado watoto wako hospitali.
Okay. So alikuwa ana communicate na nurse. kuna mwenye alikuwa night shift na day shift. Na pia kuna hapa na tuko pia ni nurse. Alikuwa anaenda anaangalia. Amekuwa supportive sana staff kudanganya. Alikuwa anaangalia na anawachunga. Sasa nurse alikuwa ananiambia, unakuja siku gani? Sasa imefika time uachukue. Sio ni pressure nyingine.
Okay.
Watakuwa wachukue ndio wapeleka wapi? Niko peke yangu, sijui kulea, breastfeed ndio hiyo. Wewe akakuja akaniambia, nitakusaidia. Tafuta mtu ama nurse Kenyatta jumeka huko, utapata nurse. Akuja akaenda ndo nitakulipia hiyo nurse. Nurse nilipata alikuwa very expensive. Alikuwa anataka 6,000 per day. Na Sunday anaenda kwenda off. Sasa mimi nashangaa Sunday nakanaje na watu.
Utafanyaje? Yeah.
So nilikuja nikamwambia akaniambia hapana, hiyo ni expensive na kama ni hivyo tafuta mtu mwingine. Tuka tafute mama mzee. Kwa sababu mama mzee anaishi na twins vizuri. Tukatafuta tukapata. But tena yeye alikuwa anataka Sunday anapewa off. Sasa hiyo Sunday akienda off nani atakaa na watoto? Kwa hapana haiwezekani. Tafuta orphanage. Yeah. Sasa ndio tena kizungumkuti kingine ikaanza.
Okay.
Uja sina mama, sina sister. So orphanage was the best option. Za Nairobi kutafuta ilikuwa bit challenge. Then nilipata unaambiwa ukipeleka watoto ni kama unawauza. Yeah. So ukipeleka watoto huko mtu anaweza kuja adapt anytime anataka. Anytime ako free, awachukue. So siku moja nikiwa Kenyatta, nikishughulika tu za nashughulika, mtu akaniita akaniambia Roni. Watu waniita Roni. Mambo poa. Mimi niko najua kuna shida fulani na nataka kuniuzia watoto.
What?
Yeah. Mtu sivali nijua sijajua mpaka leo. Alikuwa anataka nimuuzie watoto 10M Junior twins. Wamekuwa sasa niko na 500 mbele nyuma. Anaonyesha the appointment ya 500k. Hakuna hiyo cash. Nashangaa sasa anajaribu kuniambia nini. Baada nikamwambia ni sawa, kanipatia kadi, nikamwambia ni sawa, nitakupigia. Hiyo kadi nilikuwa nikitupata hapo kwa dust. Next time sikuwa naomba.
Yeah.
Nikasahau hiyo story. So after use ikienda sasa natafuta mwenye nitapeleka watoto. Huko nyumbani watu wako ready kana watoto. Watoto vile ni stress. Twins. Hawana mtu wa kunyonya. Mtu wa kuwachunga, wanalia. Usuri Kenyatta walinifundisha vizuri. Walinifundisha watoto wanakula after 3 hours.
Okay. Usiache ukaenda njaa sana
After 3 hours.
Yeah. After every 3 hours unawafeed. Yeah.
Wanawapatia nani? Kenyatta walikuwa supportive sana, sita kudanganya. So nikatafuta orphanage nikakosa. Nairobi nikakosa. Tukapata SOS. SOS walikuwa na watoto 6 months. After 6 months nende niwachukue. Baada ya 6 months bado walikuwa wadogo, ningewapeleka wapi? Kwetu mimi ndio second born. Sasa kuna mtu akona bibi kwetu, brother yangu mkubwa wananifuata, wajaoa bado. Sasa ilikuwa kazi ngumu. So aunti yangu fulani akatoka Ushago akaniambia kuna missionary orphanage iko Bondo. Ataenda ongea nao ni kama ready kuchukua watoto. Lakini wali accept.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sasa hiyo ni jani nyingine tena na kufikiria niko Nairobi watoto wanapelekwa Bondo.
Yeah.
Naona.
Your separation because
Separation
again,
tena.
yeah, right? You had bonded, you know.
Na ukienda tena kumaandikwa agreement, lazima kuje kuwaona daily. Nini a month twice. Na twice wanakuja unakaa nao kubond.
Okay.
Na ni nyakati ya corona bado fair.
True. Yeah. And there's also peer restriction ya movement, right? Yeah.
So tukaenda tukaangalia, wakakubali, tukachukua watoto, tukawapeleka.
So at this point wako how many months?
1 month.
1 month.
Hajapita bado 1 month.
Okay. All right.
Tena bado niwachukua tena, ikakuwa tena shida nyingine. Watu wakina bibi wanasema nimeiba watoto, naenda kuwauza. Yeah. So na imagine sasa karibu ni kuwe mwendo wazimu sasa.
Yeah, because it's a lot of
Kama umechukua watoto waje hatujaona watoto. Yeye katu ungeenda kusema kwambia corona ungeenda usiku na watoto. Samaka ungewatoa watu wakuje waone. Napenda ile mpeleka watoto kwa nyumba, watu wasikuje kuwaona bado juu wadogo na hiyo corona. Sasa ni vitu ni watu haraka ni wapi?
no, did they try to come and at least see the kids, waone watoto, bond with the kids, like but they have
Anti ya big wakina bibi anti wao alijaribu kamba uwezi ingia okay. Restriction kama wewe si mzazi ama next of kin hata kama ni shosho yake hauwezi. Yeah. When niliwatoa nilikuwa tu huko Nairobi, walala tu one night. The next day tukawasafirisha. Yeah. So tukienda kwa every 3 hours kuna gari
Unasimama
kando
at least, yeah.
unawapatia.
Yeah. Okay.
Nito Kenyatta walinipatia pampers mingi sana na nan.
At least yako support.
Na walinipatia ile support for 4 months.
Okay.
Kenyatta walikuwa
really
very
good.
supportive stuff na nani.
That's really, really good. Okay. So eventually resolve the whole aspect about wewe unaiba watoto unapeleka wapi. That was resolved.
No. Haikuwa
Okay.
resolved.
Yeah.
So walikuwa mpaka wanaambia nimeiba. So they had to send someone confirm watoto wako.
Oh, okay.
Ya kupata watoto wako mlipa save hapo ndo walitulia.
All right, I see that. So mkawapeleka orphanage, but unfortunately
orphanage kukaa,
right?
walikuwa nakaa. Nakwambia ilikuwa hectic. Every month naenda ushago mara 2. And transport ilikuwa shida. Fare na transport. Juu pia ilikuwa na curfew by saa fulani.
Yeah.
Kwa kwa barabara.
Yeah.
So ndio unfortunately after 3 months hata nikiushago mtoto ni mgonjwa. Nimeenda kumuona na mbwa ni mgonjwa.
Okay.
So nimeenda kumuona na mbwa ni mgonjwa, lakini mbwa ni siku na wasiwasi atakuwa sawa. Napanda gari narudi. Kufika Limuru na mtoto amezidiwa. Unatakikana ushago. Hapo tena nishuke nitafute lori sasa, jua kuna gari. Nipande lori niende ushago.
Yeah.
Ushago na mtoto ni ako sawa. Sasa tena kurudi Nairobi, nafika Limuru na mbwa. Sorry, jana amepass.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Kwa gari hivi unalia, dereva anashangaa mwanaume analia nini? Nini unalia kijana? Kule nini naambia hapana. Niko tu sawa. Dereva nikakana na mbia watu, tulieni kijana kama anaumia, naambia hapana, siko na twende. Sasa ndo namwa kumfungulia. Hadi kurudisha kwa dereva alinipatia fare kurudi. Naambia chukua wewe rudi ushago. Ni uchungu. Sasa kufika ushago napata kijana amekufa. 3 days burial preparation. Tunamzika na baki na msichana.
Yeah.
Tunaendelea na maisha.
Yeah.
Ilikuwa watu wamekuwa very supportive. Sitaki kudanganya. Wamekana 3 years. Mimi nimechukua mtoto wangu hii mwaka.
Okay.
Yeah.
But at least in between ulikuwa unaenda na muona and all.
Nilikuwa naenda kumuona every month.
Yeah.
Bonding tunakaa naye. Nampelekea vitu nakaa naye. Ndio kwamba ilikuwa chani ngumu. Kuna mtu kwetu alienda kuona watoto wangu huko.
And then there's usually a lot of things happening. A lot of kusema, amefanywa hii. Then there's a lot of like.
Then basi na kwa nini kwa baba yangu? Anaenda. Rafiki zangu wanatoka Nairobi wanaenda shago. Na huko kuona. Yeah.
I mean, there's so much because there's the mental, health aspect. Wewe like through all these things because it's like you are go. That hauna time yako ya kujieta fikiria like ama tatu ukae chini, everything sinks in. You deal with everything else that imefanyika. But at some point, like, were you able to, maybe at a seek professional help? Because it's a lot for one person to go through in a very short amount of time.
Sikuwahi. Sikumata mwaka ndo nimeanza kuongelea. Hapa nipata na Dr. Kireki, nimeanza kuongelea mimi sikuongelea. Juu niliona watu wamenisidline. Na sasa nataka kunyuka strong, kabidi tu nikae na shida zangu.
But talking about it doesn't matter ni nani whether professional or not, like just talking about it at least
kuna mtu nimeongelea kuhusu.
Right? Yeah.
Rafiki yangu tu nakwambia walikuwa najua, wali amesema tu unaenda mtoto kwa ushago. Anaitwa Fred. Akachukua gari akalipa gari tukaenda mpaka ushago kuona mtoto. Yeah. And he's been mtu supporting sana stakudanganya.
Yeah. At least you have had support from, different quarters. Yeah. But wewe like right now, leo tuko hapa tunaongea. How are you? How are you doing?
Yes, sema tu niko sawa. Saa zingine nakaa hivi kwa nyumba nafikiria sana. What if angekuwa, what if ingefanyika? Yeah, vitu kama hizo. What if tungekuwa pamoja, tumekuwa wapi? Watoto angekuwaje?
Yeah.
What if ule angekufa?
Yeah.
Hizo ndio ziko kwa akili yangu. What if ni mingi sana.
Yeah.
But sina answer.
Okay. So at this point you are because then you can't explain how you are, whether you're okay or not, but
niko sawa.
Uko sawa.
Niko naambia watu niko sawa.
Uko sawa. So what is it that you'd like then for people to know? Because again, losing your wife, because vile unasema, your biggest dream was not just to, watoto wazaliwe na wako healthy, but also your wife akwe sawa and wewe na familia yako mtoke wote hospitali, mkuje nyumbani, right? But that did not happen, unfortunately. So what is it that you'd like to tell people, whether it's, you know, like healthcare facilities, people who might be going through, you know, what you went through?
Shida kubwa nilikuja kuona ni kuna damu kidogo sana kwa blood for banks. Yeah. So kuna mgonjwa anataka damu hawezi kupatia. Kama kuja ulete watu wa donate.
Yeah.
Ndio wakitoa sasa wajuzi zinaingia huko.
Clearly, there's a very big gap on what is happening.
Yeah.
Okay, but what would be your message then to, you know, either the government or the general population? Because there's so many facets to your story, and unfortunately, it's just one person, like in this case, you, who've gone through all those things. So, what would be your message to the people who are watching us, and even maybe to like government agencies and whatnot?
Sasa kwa leo na watch, mimi naweza waambia kama uko na watu wana support, ndio watu kana waambie shida unapitia, wa support. Unfortunately, mimi siko na watu wanaweza kwa kuridi kunisikia. That's why nilibeba shida zangu pia. Pande ya maternity, government inafaa tu invest sana. Asi ukipeleka hata mtu kujifungua mahali, msiku una referred enda kwingine. Na kuangalia watu wanaenda kujifungua. Niliona ni process kubwa sana huko.
Yeah.
Na mimi naheshimu mtu mama mimi kwa leba katoka, hakuna heshima zangu zote. Mimi nilijionea. Siku rahisi.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, Ronald. If there's anyone who maybe would want to offer that support, like mental support for you, would you be open to just go through a counselor and speak about it? And
yeah, very open.
You'll be open. Okay, all right. But for now, I should say thank you.
Yeah,
thank you so much for sharing your story. Very, very heavy that I don't even know how to bridge from this to the next video part. But you're strong. The fact that umeketi hapa ukatuongelesha, you know, really appreciate that. Yeah.
Mwanangu nilikuwa nalipa. Kwa duration fulani kazi ilikuja kaisha. Nikakakuwa ni bila kazi.
Okay.
So nilikuwa na balance huko. Yananipeleka hata mbio nafikiri venda nani malizi. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's as much support as you can get. That would be.
Yeah, balance huko nikimaliza tu ndio nikula kichwa sasa hivi.
Yeah.
Nani maliza. But na jaribu kutafuta pesa bainaza pia. Nikiona dai 52,000.
Yeah. So any form of support you would appreciate. Okay. Thank you so much, and we really hope that you will get that, you know, that kind of support. And maybe for the people who are watching us today, they would want to support you. Maybe is there like a number, a way that they can reach you?
My number is 0715 55 30 49.
Okay.
You call on 24/7.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and like you said, you're also open to get like mental health support as well. Okay. Thank you very much, Ronald, and all the very best in, you know, picking yourself up, pole. Like you said, she's a girl. She's turning 4 years right now. So all the very best as well. And we pray that you will get healing even as you raise your child, right?
Healing is a process.
It is a process.
Not one healing
is a process. Yes.
Yeah.
So pole through.
Pole.
Yeah, pole. You'll get there.
Well.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Ronald Otieno, sharing his journey after unfortunately losing his wife to postpartum hemorrhage. On the other side of the break, we'll be speaking to Dr. Kireki, who will take us then through the entire process, just understanding what postpartum hemorrhage is, what are some of the risk factors for the same, and you know, what can be done to prevent. But that is coming up after the break. Stay with us. The show is Your World. All right, welcome back. And just in case you missed the first part of the conversation today, we're focusing on postpartum hemorrhage. And we spoke to Mr. Ronald, who unfortunately lost his wife to postpartum hemorrhage. But just to get to understand more about the same and why it actually happens, we have Dr. Kireki Omano, who's the president, Kenya Obstetrical and Gynecological Society of Kenya, to help us really understand this and what are some of the ways that we can do to prevent the same. So Dr. Kireki, thank you so much. It's good to see you once again. I'm tempted to say Happy New Year, but then we're close to the, to the end of the year. But it's so good to see you.
Yes.
Sad story from Ronald. And the biggest question is, in 2024, why are we still losing lives and women really to postpartum hemorrhage? But before that, can we first of all understand, when we say postpartum hemorrhage, what exactly does that mean?
Thank you very much for actually coming, for inviting me to talk about postpartum hemorrhage. And I want to say that you asked in 2024, why are women still dying because of postpartum hemorrhage? I think it is an indictment to all of us, whether it is in government, whether they are policymakers, that we have these cases. And our statistics are not very good, because the government of Kenya says that we lose approximately 355 women out of every 100,000 women who deliver.
Yeah.
So in essence, what we are saying, that if 1 million women deliver, we lose 3,550. International organizations give a different figure, a slightly higher figure, about 5,500 women out of every 1 million women who deliver. So whichever way we look at it, whether it's 355 out of every 100,000 or whether it's 550, it is still a huge number.
One life lost is
life lost is one life too many. What is postpartum hemorrhage? When a woman is unexpectant, actually the size of the womb is about the size of my hand. That is the size of the womb.
All right.
Now, David in Psalms, I think it's 134 verse 19, he says, we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And there is no better explanation to what David saw than what the changes that happen in a woman's body when she gets pregnant. Because remember, the size is about that big of a non-pregnant, non-gravid uterus. And then when pregnancy occurs, by the time it is 9-10 months, that womb has stretched to be able to accommodate a baby. Maybe 3 kilos, 3.5 kilos, sometimes even more, 4 kilos, sometimes even more. And then apart from that, it also accommodates amniotic fluid, which acts like a shock absorber for the baby, and also some form of, that is what the baby drinks, and that's what the baby urinates. And then there is also what we call the placenta. The placenta is an organ which connects the mother to the baby through the cord. That is where we have a small hole, not hole, but a remnant of that cord on our abdomens. Now, when a woman delivers, whether it is naturally, vaginally, or whether it is through a cesarean section, what happens is once the baby has come out, the amniotic fluid has come out, the baby comes out, the placenta also comes out. And as it does that, the uterus contracts. Now, remember, the placenta is where the nutrients pass through to get to the baby. And also, some of the waste products also pass through that way to get to the mother's system and out of the body. Now, there are blood vessels through the uterus which connect now the placenta. And these blood vessels must contract after the placenta has come out in order to stop the bleeding. There is a small amount of bleeding. When a woman delivers vaginally, it's about 150, 200 milliliters, which is okay. So long as that patient has a good, let me call it a good blood level, what we call hemoglobin level. So if hemoglobin level is about 10, 11, 12, 150 means 200 means is nothing. But if she has anemia of pregnancy, or just anemia, and her HB is, let's say, 6 or even 5, even that 50 milliliters is a problem for her. Then 100 milliliters is going to be a big complication for her. So that placenta comes out, the uterus contracts, the bleeding stops. The same thing happens during a cesarean section. Once we have opened the abdomen, we opened the uterus, we get the baby out, and we get the placenta out, the uterus contracts. In the PPH, postpartum hemorrhage, what happens is that most of the time, the placenta does not, the uterus does not contract the way it should. So what happens is that those vessels where the placenta came out from, they are open and they continue bleeding into the uterus. That is one. And if there is no contraction, that bleeding continues coming. In the uterus, the blood gathers there. It comes out as clots. And if nothing is done, actually that woman is going to bleed to death. So that is one of the reasons where the uterus does not contract properly. The other reason is when during normal delivery, you may have tears on the cervix. If we imagine the uterus as a balloon, and where you blow air into is what you call the cervix of the womb. So during delivery, there is an opening. The cervix opens. And if the baby is big, sometimes it may stretch those tissues, leading to tears. If those tears are not noted early enough, and they are taken care of by putting a suture there, a stitch there, she will continue bleeding, even if the uterus is contracted.
Okay.
So that can lead to PPH as well.
All right.
If you have some tissue which remains inside the womb, the placenta, for example, sometimes the placenta does not come out completely. Bits and pieces of it may remain there, or sometimes even the whole placenta can actually remain there, what we call placenta accreta spectrum. So the placenta can't come out, doesn't come out, and the baby has come out and there is bleeding, and we can't get it out. So that leads to that. And then a small percentage of patients have the problem with their clotting mechanism.
Oh, I see.
So if the clotting mechanism is not okay, she will deliver, the uterus will be contracted, there will be no tears, but she'll continue bleeding. So those are the 4 T's that we you
look out for.
Yes.
I see that. And so then who is more at risk? Because right about now, there's a whole emphasis about women going to a hospital and giving birth in hospital setting. But then again, we also have other instances where access sometimes is a problem.
Correct.
Or others would ideally, because our grandmothers, delivered at, right?
Yes.
So looking at these 2 scenarios, is it there's more that is more at risk than the other, or it just happens when maybe it happens?
There are risk factors. So there are women who are more at risk. We will look and see, we stratify and say, this one, there is a possibility that she can have postpartum hemorrhage. Okay. For example, if a woman has had postpartum hemorrhage in the past, she will have a risk. If a woman is carrying a big baby, and we can actually see that during a scan, or sometimes just by looking at that abdomen, say, that abdomen is big, looks bigger than normal. Okay. And then when you do a scan, you see that baby is big, 4 kilos, 4.5 kilos. Actually, there 3 weeks ago, I was on call in KNH, and we had a patient who had, the first baby was 6 kilos. She had delivered 6 kilos. Unbelievable.
Wow.
6 kilos. Yes. The second one.
Wait, that's possible?
Well, she delivered 6 kilos. Okay. The second one was 4.7 kilos. The third one was 4.5. The fourth one was 4.2. Yes.
Okay.
It happens.
Okay.
So this was her, I think, her 5th or 6th pregnancy.
Yeah.
She had, I think, 1 miscarriage. Okay. But the other thing is that she also had a problem. She had a problem with diabetes. Right. So with diabetics, we know that they will have big babies. But still, 6 kilos is huge. So the smallest baby she had delivered was 4.2, and she had delivered vaginally. It's just amazing. It's a miracle how she never had PPH. So big babies, so that is a risk factor. If you're carrying multiple babies, twins, triplets, sometimes even 4 babies, quadruplets, that is a huge risk factor.
Okay.
If you have what you call fibroids, and fibroids are basically growths. So if there are fibroids, that will also mean that as the pregnancy progresses, those fibroids will actually grow with the pregnancy. Yeah. And when it comes now after delivery, that contraction will not be there, because whatever contraction starts will be hampered by the fibroids which are there. So growths in the ovary, in the uterus, that is fibroids. If the amniotic fluid, the amount of fluid that surrounds the baby is a lot, what we call polyhydramnios, because then if the amount is more than what we want it to be, that is about 25 centimeters. So you find it is stretched. By the time the baby comes out, that uterus is very stretched. The mechanism of contraction is actually hampered because of that.
I see that, yeah.
Age is also a factor, unfortunately. Younger women, and I don't want to use older, so I use mature women, also have that problem. Okay. We have had
younger
cases
and older.
Younger and older.
Where are we looking at? The budgets? Because if you ask a 40, 50-year-old woman, they'll tell you, hey, I'm still young.
Yeah, of course, they're still young.
Right? Yeah, but really, what other budgets are we looking at?
We are looking at adolescents.
Okay.
Adolescent girls. And unfortunately, we are seeing quite a big number of adolescent girls, getting pregnant, 13, 14, 15, 16. If they get pregnant, their pregnancies usually may end up having complications, because their bodies, these are children, so their bodies are not yet mature. And when you talk about mature women, we are talking about 36, 37, when you get to 40, 41, and so on. And especially if you're having the baby for the first time, that there's a tendency for these age groups to have issues with hypertension, what you call preeclampsia in pregnancy. We have diabetes also, what you call gestational diabetes. And we also see a lot more PPH in them as well.
Okay.
And I also talked about if you had PPH in the past, then there is also a tendency of having that in the future as well.
Yeah. I see that. And you see, one of the biggest questions, and also looking at Ronald's case, so he said, unfortunately, the wife passed on 2 weeks after delivery, and you know, they had multiple twins. So the biggest question might be, is there like a specific duration that probably healthcare, you know, professionals are on the lookout for? Because the biggest question was 2 weeks later, and you know, when you're talking about contraction,
Actually, when you talk about PPH, there is what you call primary PPH and secondary PPH. So the primary PPH is soon after delivery, to 24 hours afterwards, and then the secondary one will now be after that, even up to 42 days after delivery.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So unfortunately, if it happens that way, what we normally do is when patients go, when we discharge them, we inform them about the possible what you call the danger signs.
Okay.
So, for example, with a mother for the first time, say, look, if you're going to breastfeed, we want you to breastfeed, but you find your breasts are engorged and the milk is not coming out, and you start having a temperature, a fever, please come to the hospital. If you feel like when the blood is coming out is a lot more than expected, you're feeling several pads a day, that is also not okay. If you're passing clots, that is also not okay. If you start feeling dizzy, because when you start losing blood like that, it will affect your body generally. So please come and see, visit a hospital and see a doctor as soon as possible. Yes.
So then, looking at where we are at as a country, and how we're handling, I mean, you know, maternity and you know, all those things.
Yes.
How would you say we're handling cases of PPH? Are we in a place where we're sort of like able to prevent, maybe control? Where are we as a country? And then maybe we can look at across the region and how the rest of the world is handling the same.
That is a loaded question.
Yeah.
But I want to sort of approach it with a short story.
Okay.
It's a real life story which happened not too long ago. I was in one of the private hospitals, and I had finished a procedure I was doing, and I was going to change. And then I met my colleague, an anesthesiologist, shouting and telling me, please come to theater 3 or theater 4. We have serious PPH. So PPH is an emergency, number one. So wherever it happens, it has to be treated as an emergency. And there are some things which you have to do. So I came to this theater and I found my colleague really struggling with this patient, and she was really poorly. The patient was really poorly. A young lady, 31 years old, and that was her first pregnancy. She had delivered small baby, an average baby, not small, 3.1 kilos at term. And after delivery, there were no tears. The uterus was contracted. There was a small tear in the vagina where my colleague had put 1 or 2 stitches, and it has stopped bleeding. But here I come, and I find she's really struggling. There's what we call an abdominal pack, which we use to in surgery. When we're operating in the abdomen, we put it to separate organs. Okay. So you put an abdominal pack there, and after a few minutes, it will be completely sore, and you have to remove it. Okay. So she had been struggling for some time. And as we say, 2 heads are better than 1. Sure. So I said, do you mind if I have a look? She said, yeah, 2 heads are better than 1. So I look and I asked, were there any tears? No. Well, nothing. So you remember the 4 T's that I talked about. I massage the uterus. It feels as if it is contracted, but she's actually really pouring like a tap. So the next thing I ask my colleague, the anesthetist, have you given medications which help in the contraction? He says, yes, I've given all the medications, and, you know, he rattles them off. I said, okay, so medication-wise, we are okay. But why is she still bleeding? And she's bleeding heavily. So I put my hand, just to examine, I put my hands inside the vagina and into the uterus. I felt as if there was something at the back of the uterus, most probably a fibroid. Okay. So my understanding, or rather my assessment, was that most probably the placenta had been lying on a fibroid. So when it came out, the vessels were still open. The uterus could not contract at that part. So that is why she was bleeding. So normally in such a case, we have what is called a uterine balloon tamponade. So it's something like a balloon. We insert it inside the vagina, fill it with fluid. It will block the vessels from bleeding, and it will start the clotting mechanism so that she stops bleeding.
Yeah.
So I asked the theater staff, do you have a UBT, uterine balloon tamponade? They say we don't have. Meanwhile, she's bleeding. Meanwhile, you can hear that anesthetic machine, going tick, tick. The pressure is actually dropping, and here she's just pouring. I said, okay, do you have a catheter? A catheter is a tube which we insert inside the bladder when we are doing operations. Said, yes, we have a catheter. Okay, bring me a catheter. And now I'm thinking about improvising something to insert inside the vagina. So I asked them for guess what? For a condom. And they said there was no condom. So I said, please get a condom.
What is it? Yeah.
What is a condom?
Yeah.
Actually, a condom, you remember the UBT that I talked about?
Yeah.
This is factory made.
Yeah.
So you just insert it and pump fluid into it, and it will expand.
Yeah.
So now with the catheter and the condom, you're actually improvising a UBT. So you insert the catheter into the condom and tie it. So once you've tied it, it will create a balloon at the end there, and insert it inside the vagina, and then push fluid through an opening in the catheter. So it will balloon nicely, and it will actually block the vessels which were bleeding. So one of the theater staff walked out and came back after maybe a long 1 minute.
Yeah, because at one time,
Because meanwhile, she's bleeding.
Yeah.
So she came back and said, excuse me, I wanted to say something. He said, yes. He said, I have a condom, but it was not in my purse. We said, we don't care where it was.
We don't care, but yeah.
Just needed, give it to us. So, so anyway, we improvised that. We inserted it inside, pushed in water, and guess what? It stopped bleeding. You have never felt a sigh of relief like that. Stopped bleeding. So we made sure, we said, okay, just to make sure that there's nothing else, we packed it, we pushed in an abdominal pack, and we said, let this rest here for 24 hours without removing it. Then you'll be sure it will have blocked, it will have clotted, and the vessels will be blocked. You asked what we are doing. What actually saved that lady? Several things, and I call them pillars. Number one, we had the human resource. There were 2 consultants on this side. There was a senior consultant on the other side, an anesthesiologist, who was monitoring the blood pressures, giving the medications, while we are struggling on this other side. The 2 of us now were struggling here, and we managed to get the reason for the bleeding, and we managed to stop it. After that, the medications that she got, the medications were all available that were needed.
Okay.
Give this, yes. This one is there, all of it. Unfortunately, in Kenya, sometimes we have stockouts, we don't have medications, or the medications we have are fake, unfortunately. So you give an injection, you expect the uterus to contract, it does not contract. So we have a challenge there. So human resource, medications. Number 3, we had blood. It was a private facility. By the way, when she came to deliver, her hemoglobin, that is the amount of blood, was 11.1. By the time she went to the ICU, it had dropped all that bleeding. It had dropped to 3.1. Yes, 3.1. Wow. So she had lost about 2 liters of blood. Commodities. Of course, we didn't have that UBT that is factory made, but at least we managed to improvise one, which saved her life, because it's the one which stopped her bleeding. There was an ICU unit, and an ICU, not a caricature of a building or a room, but an ICU with equipment, with medications, and with staff, dedicated staff who were trained to actually man. These are the 5 pillars. So human resource, good quality medications, we have blood, we have commodities, and you have a well-equipped ICU. And then you can add another one, accessibility. You talked about accessibility. There will be places whereby these women, in as much as they want to get to hospital on time, because of the poor infrastructure, they will not get there on time. And they will get to a hospital where you'll find, yes, the doctors are there, they have the experience, but they don't have blood. So as a country, we are not doing well. In most places, you actually have 2 or 3, or even all these pillars are not there. So that is why we are losing women the way we are losing,
And
which
we
is very
shouldn't.
sad.
It's very unfortunate.
Very, very unfortunate.
So then the big question is, what do we do?
Many
Right?
things we can do.
Yeah.
Many things we can do. We are wasting a lot of money in some things which don't make sense. And this is something which, you see, for example, when you talk about the human resource, there are some counties where we have, as from where I sit as the president of the Kenyan Obstetrical and Gynecological Society, I know that there are some counties where you have two consultants, two,
Yep.
1, 2.
The
So
entire
even
county.
if they work 25 hours a day, they will not be able to actually have a dent on this. So what are we saying? We're producing a lot of doctors, a lot of nurses. These doctors, these nurses should be deployed to places where there is need.
Yeah.
And there is an imbalance because, for example, most of my colleagues are actually in Nairobi and in the big towns, Mombasa, Eldoret, Kisumu, and so on.
Yeah.
But the far-flung areas of Kenya, you find other colleagues are really struggling. So maybe a healthcare commission, sort of, that is just my thinking, would actually be able to help, because it would say, Dr. Kireki, you have been posted to County X to go and work there, just like it used to be before devolution. But now we have devolution, we have 47 counties, 47 different ministries of health, 47 different policies probably. So the national government can sort of have an umbrella policy, but now when it comes to the particular counties, it becomes a different story altogether. We can have a budget for health, ring-fenced that this is just health, not to go into one big basket and then we just do what? We just do expenses the way you do. I don't know whether that is what the counties do, but I think. And now even when we get to that budget of health, we can actually have a certain portion ring-fenced that this is reproductive health. And remember, it's only reproductive health, which is actually included in the Constitution, that all Kenyans have a right to health, to the highest degree of health, and especially reproductive health, because they've recognized that these mothers, we have to take care of the mothers. If we don't take care of the mothers, we don't have a nation.
That's true. I see that. So then, is there a way that we can prevent? Because I know there's so much that needs to be done, from policy, levels, all to availability of funds, to making sure that healthcare facilities are easily accessible. But from an individual, let's say, perspective, that is, pregnant mother, and then, healthcare facilities, what are some of the things that then we can put in place just to make sure that we don't lose mothers, really?
I think there are many things we can do. I think number one, we have to start with creating awareness. What you don't know, you will not be able to sort of relate to. So people don't know about PPH. In fact, when you talk to some of our policymakers, they have no idea about PPH. I've had interactions with some of them, politicians. They say, what do you mean that 355 women are dying out of 300,000? We don't know about this. So awareness is of importance. And at this point, I just want to highlight that the University of Nairobi, Kenyan Obstetrical and Gynecological Society, as well as the Midwifery Association of Kenya, have come together to organize the first PPH run. And that will be on the 6th of October from Ulinzi Sports Complex. And we'll run all the way to around Timor and then come back. It's a short distance. It's about 4.5 kilometers one way and back. But we want to start that way to create awareness. We want people to start asking, what is PPH? And what implications does it have? If my wife was pregnant today, is she at risk of having PPH? And if she's at risk of having PPH, what then can be done before that to mitigate, chances of this happening? So it's basically welcoming and inviting all the Kenyans to come and run with us. And they can register at www.endpph.com. Once we have created awareness like that, we want this awareness to start from even primary school. Yeah, because when they grow up knowing that there's a problem with PPH, when a young child sees her mother pregnant, they say, Mom, have you heard about PPH? hey, we don't want you to, you know, that sort of thing. So creating that awareness is important. And then number two, we have to start talking about it. You remember with the HIV, the way it was in the beginning, it was hush, 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 hush,
don't talk about
until
this.
people started talking about it. Once that people start asking questions, then we can actually now hold the hospital, not the hospitals, but the administration, because they are the ones who hold the purse strings. What are you doing to our hospitals? Will our mothers get this care? And once we start asking those questions and holding these policy makers and the decision makers, especially in terms of finance, and because without finance, you cannot employ healthcare workers. Without finance, you cannot buy quality medication. Without finance, you cannot have blood, and so on. And by the way, as we are creating awareness about PPH, there is a very important commodity, which is blood. Without blood, you can have all the medication, but if you don't have blood, then it will not work. We have a problem on that side as well. Our colleagues from the hematology department say we collect about blood transfusion units, we collect about 276,000 units of blood. A unit of blood is that one bag, 276,000 units of blood. And that is about 60% of what we need as a country. We need about 500,000 units every year. And guess what? 70% of the 276,000 units we collect is used by who? By women who are coming to deliver. Most of the time, because of anemia, because of PPH. So we also need to create awareness that you donating blood once a year, even twice a year maximum, will actually go a long way in alleviating this problem. And then the other thing is about having quality medication. There is nothing as sad as that 60 years after independence, we are still getting madawa gushi. Can you imagine?
And we need to end the show, and my question would be, so moving forward, what is it that you'd want to see? Where do we need to start? Because clearly there's so much that needs to be done.
Yes.
Where do we begin from?
I cannot do that question. But there's a lot we can do. There is what we call Sustainable Development Goals 3.1, whereby we are supposed to reduce our maternal mortality rates by 2030 from the number that we have, whether it's 355 or whatever we have, to 70. But my thinking is, why should 70 women die? It should be zero. Should be zero. There are countries which have zero mortalities, Luxembourg and so on. But they have done this because there has been a consistent and a planned way and very focused way of doing this. And we can do it. We have the reasons for fighting this amorphous challenge called PPH. Do we have the willpower? We have the willpower. Do we have the machinery? We do have the machinery. So we need to put all these things together. So the government needs to come in. And then you asked about what we can do as a community, as everybody. As professionals, number one, we are creating awareness. Number two, the doctors who are coming through the training channels, we want to sort of sensitize them such that by the time they go out there, wherever they will know that once something, PPH, it's an emergency, and this 1, 2, 3, this is what we need to do. We need to come to pull the community health promoters on board as well, because these are the ones who are going to see these women at the community level. And then, of course, the possible risk factors, they can actually tease them out and direct them to that. Women who have these risk factors should be followed very, very clearly by the doctors and so on. In some counties, actually, what they have started doing is what they have high-risk clinics. Then there is what we call a surveillance and response after maternal deaths. And that some counties have actually started doing that on a weekly basis. The other thing is research and data collection. Because here we say the ministry has 355 out of every 100,000. International organizations say they have 550. So msema kweli yuko wapi? So we don't have that data. And then we can actually, at some point, after 6 months, we say, look, this is the data we have, and this is real-time data, and these are the problems we are having. So without data, big-time data, we cannot solve anything. So I think that is also another thing.
I really see that. Thank you very much, Dr. for your time today. I mean, so much, that has been discussed, so much that we need to do, and I'm pretty sure that at some point we will get there. All right, that has been Dr. Kireki Omanwa, who is the president of Kenya Obstetrical and Gynecological Society of Kenya, just helping us understand, first of all, how grave the situation is and what we need to do from a community level, professionals, the county, as well as the national government, because one life lost is too many, and we do not want to lose our women, especially in this day and age, to postpartum hemorrhage. My name is Winnie Lubembe. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll see you right here on Your World next time. Goodbye for now. Sound of you. Wait, tumalize haya. Okay. Nilisema bye. Eh, si like bye. Basi nitafanya hivi bye. Na hata kama ni wewe huwezi kubali. You'll be like, absolutely not.